very different. So while I do see that there is value in looking at the gender or the sex of the jurors, I think the age told us a lot more based on the arguments we saw.
Bernarda, you think it was smart that Sean Combs did not take the stand?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If Sean Combs would have taken the stand, this case would have become a deliberation of whether this jury believed what Sean Combs had to say, whether his demeanor came off as one as credible. Also, you have to think where if Sean Combs were to testify, there was a lot of evidence that the prosecution was not able to get in their case in chief because they were missing a link. And that link would have been Sean Combs. So they would have been able to get that evidence in had Sean Combs testified. So it would have changed the deliberation process, and we would have probably been looking at a completely different verdict. Also got to think, how would he be able to explain in terms of the brutal beating of Cassie and of Jane on that particular occasion?
Aaron, do you think we'll hear from the family? Sean Combs' mother, Janice, was in the courtroom along with his sons, his daughters. Are they expected to speak? Do you think they will speak?
I'm not sure. They haven't yet during the course of this trial, but the cars that they've been using to transport themselves to and from the courthouse are now pulling up to the front here, and they should be walking out those golden doors any moment. They may opt to wait until they know whether Combs is going to get released on bail, as his defense attorney argued he should be. And Combs almost seemed confident that the judge would grant it. He mouthed and said aloud to members of his family in the gallery, "I'm coming home, baby," after the split verdict here, acquitting him of the most serious charges, but finding him guilty of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And because that is not a violent crime, the defense said that he has earned the right to get released on $1 million bail, as Combs offered to put up.
Aaron, we talk about the support outside of the courthouse there, the cheers that were heard from inside the courtroom. We should point out it's because he had his mom and his kids inside that courtroom. But if you want to talk about people showing up to support Sean Combs throughout all of this, the only celebrity that we witnessed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that came to show support was Kanye West.
That's right, and what a moment that was. The family now is coming out. You can see the mother of Sean Combs waving and giving a thumbs up. His sons walking out as well. Twin daughters. You can hear perhaps the cheers from some of the supporters, if you can hear them over the hum of the traffic. There were supporters in the courtroom throughout, a few outside, but only Kanye West showed up to court. And when he walked in his all-white suit, he said he was here to support Sean Combs, but he never saw him. He was not allowed inside the courtroom itself. He watched about 10 minutes of the proceedings inside an overflow room and was in and out of the courthouse in about 20 minutes. And we're not sure whether he was invited or not, or showed up of his own volition. There really haven't been that many supporters apart from his family that just left court, as you can see, waving and giving a thumbs up moments ago. Sean Combs has been largely left alone with members of his family, including the mother of at least one of his children. His twin daughters were here at the beginning. They came at the end. His sons were here throughout the case, as was his mother. And when the jury came back stuck yesterday, Combs turned to his mother and said, "It's going to be okay." And today, after the outcome, he turned to his family and said, "I'm coming home, baby."
Bernarda, let me pull something out of what Aaron just said. Sean Combs was largely left alone through all of this. We're talking about somebody that was a huge businessman, a music mogul, a producer, a huge part of making hip hop mainstream. He threw these lavish parties. He was always pointed to at big events and galas. The fact that Aaron said he was largely left alone, what does that tell you?
And he was. I was in a courtroom for the entire trial with the exception of one day. And literally the only person who showed up was Kanye. And the jury didn't get to see Kanye because he was in an overflow room. But in terms of being left alone, Kira, are you surprised? When you look at that video, the Intercontinental video, there's no running from it. And artists and celebrities, they wanted to run away from that because they didn't want to be associated with that type of violence. So it came down to money.
Bernarda, thank you. Aaron, want to take it to you as we reach the top of the hour here. We now wait to see if indeed the judge makes a decision. He says he will make it today if he will allow Sean Combs to be released and walk out those doors behind you.
The judge gave them several hours to make written arguments before he issues a decision on release on bail. But Sean Combs is already celebrating after he was acquitted of the most serious charges that he faced that could have sent him to prison for life. He was convicted of transporting people for the purposes of prostitution, but taking that as a win, even though in theory he still faces up to 20 years in prison, Kira.
And acquitted of the most serious charges. Bernarda, Brian, Aaron, thank you. We're going to return you now to your regular programming. For some of you, that is Good Morning America. But I do want to tell you about an ABC News special, Verdict, the Diddy trial, that will air tonight, 10 Eastern. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. The entire team will be here for World News Tonight with David Muir. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks for staying with us.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo, and we are
There you have it, people. I really don't know what to say, man. I think what you said, Sweet Pea, what you said, Uncle Charles, have a lot of truth to it. When you got money, man, you can do just about anything you want to, man. This is amazing. Y'all give me 1 second. I just woke up and seen the bullshit. So, guilty only on the transportation of the prostitution. Wow. I guess they couldn't find enough evidence for the racketeering. And they only had one of those. You had to have, I think, two. Man. The world we living in. Those people who testify, just like you said, at least they had the balls and the guts to get up there and say something. As we see, there's a lot more people who were involved. But I will say this. There's gonna be people who's going to take him to court civilly and sue him. By the time they finish with this, that motherfucker gonna be broke. You feel me? Let's see if they got another one up here. Oh shit, they still talking about it. All right, so I thought they was finished. We're talking about here.
not a mandatory minimum. So technically, the judge can even sentence him to probation or to time served. 3, whether there's a risk of flight of him not returning to face sentencing date. That is highly unlikely, especially since Sean Combs knows what the exposure is, and also that for him to flee, it would give him a bigger exposure and almost guaranteed a jail sentence if he weren't to come back. So the judge should release him today. In terms of sentencing, now that's a long process there. The first thing that's going to take place is that the judge is going to order the Department of Probation to do a probation report and a probation interview of Sean Combs and do a deep dive into his background and ultimately make a recommendation as to what the sentence is going to be. Best believe that Intercontinental video is going to come back into light when it comes to sentencing, because the judge can take into account criminal acts that he wasn't convicted of when determining a sentence, a just sentence for Sean Combs. But given that he has a lack of criminal record in terms of something serious, it's highly likely that the judge will give him something in relation as to time served, or maybe just a few more months in terms of being incarcerated, since he was found guilty of 2 counts that technically can run consecutive.
Now, the prosecution has already said they're going to be seeking a severe sentence here, or a significant sentence. What do you think that means in terms of what they're going to at least try for?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if the prosecution doesn't ask for the max and ask for the sentences to be consecutive.
Just 20 years.
Yes, for 20 years, the max, because it's 10 years max as to each of these counts, and they can actually run consecutive. The prosecution is going to name out that, look, when it came to transportation to engage in prostitution, we're not talking about just 1 instance or 2 instances. During their closing arguments, they put up a photograph of 27 men that were actually trafficked as a result of doing these freak-offs and these hotel nights. So the prosecution is going to try to seek the maximum amount of sentence and also include those acts that he was found not guilty of in terms of that Intercontinental video, and get statements from Jane and Cassie in order to try to move this judge to try to get the maximum sentence, which again is highly unlikely.
Bernardo, the defense argued throughout that all of the sexual encounters in this case were consensual. Does the fact that the jury found him not guilty of sex trafficking mean they agreed with that?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that the prosecution has to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. So just because a person is found not guilty doesn't mean that they necessarily said that they found that they weren't any freak-offs or that it wasn't consensual, but that there was some seed of doubt that prevented them from saying that he is guilty. When they say not guilty, it's not saying that they're proclaiming that Sean Combs is innocent. What it is that person, Sean Combs, is being acquitted. That verdict says that the prosecution did not prove this count beyond a reasonable doubt, but not necessarily that they believe in their heart that Sean Combs didn't commit these acts and that it wasn't consensual.
And I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, who's been at the court throughout this whole trial. Aaron, what sticks out to you about the way this verdict came down and the discussions that these attorneys are now having as they write letters to the judge about whether or not Combs should be released?
They have several hours now, Diane, to make the case whether Sean Combs should be released on bail. Combs himself offered $1 million bail, and the judge indicated to him that he did not want to go back to MDC, the federal lockup in Brooklyn where he's been held. And that's when he clasped his hands together as if to say, that's exactly right, Judge. And so the judge said he would decide today whether to release him on bail. Prosecutors asked for a few hours to put their letter in opposing it. He does still, as prosecutors point out, face the possibility of 20 years in prison on the conviction of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And the way prosecutors see it, he's a flight risk and a potential danger. Even though they did not prove the sex trafficking or the racketeering conspiracy, prosecutors still told the judge he has a predilection to committing crimes, including violent crimes, and represents a potential danger, particularly to women. He also, we should say, Diane, faces at least 6 civil lawsuits that accuse him of acts of violence. We'll see where those shake out in the coming weeks and months, but Combs would no doubt like to try and fend those off as quickly as possible. Outside here, Diane, there is a crowd of supporters that looks like they're going to hang out to see whether he walks through those golden doors sometime this afternoon.
And I want to drill down on those civil suits with our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, also here with me on set. Brian, I think it's in the realm of 60 civil lawsuits against Sean Combs right now. How does this verdict impact those cases?
Yeah, so about 60 or 59 civil lawsuits. I believe 14 of them involve a minor. And so the impact on for those cases on this is somewhat positive in some lights, actually, ironically enough, and somewhat negative. The negative, obviously, in that he was found not guilty of the RICO conspiracy and the sex trafficking. So if there's any allegations that mirror that in these civil complaints, Sean Combs is going to feel very confident that he might be able to win those. But different allegations, different alleged victims. And I think, as Bernardo pointed out as well, there's a different standard there. And it comes to a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, a much higher standard than the civil standard of preponderance of evidence, more likely than not, or 51%. But the reason why I say it could be potentially positive for those filing civil lawsuits is if Sean Combs was found guilty of that racketeering conspiracy, there would be a forfeiture application in terms of trying to dismantle that racketeering conspiracy, that criminal enterprise, where the federal government would have had their opportunity to take money out of Sean Combs before the civil lawsuits would have had their opportunity. So in a way, Sean Combs may still have enough money in his pocket that those filing civil lawsuits might be able to find a victory through that process. I compare and contrast to, for example, the R. Kelly trial, where he was found guilty of racketeering conspiracy, and there was a forfeiture there. And many of the people filing civil lawsuits against R. Kelly found it difficult to win in those cases.
And I want to bring in Kelly Carter to talk about the cultural impact here, because Kelly, it's hard to understate or overstate, I should say, the role of Sean Combs in music and culture in general. I mean, not only was he a legend in rap music, he was a legend in music in general, as a producer, as an artist, and then on to becoming a businessman with an empire. What does this mean for all that now?
I mean, I think it means a lot. The truth of the matter is that it almost didn't really matter what the outcome was of this trial. The conversation changes immediately about what his legacy is. You know, this is a person who really touched every corner of pretty much every industry, not just music, not just spirits, not just fashion, politics, pretty much every industry he touched. He really ushered the hip hop generation into the mainstream, into commercialism, and made it the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is right now. And I think, you know, regardless of the outcome, it's going to be difficult for people to unhear some of that testimony and to certainly unsee, you know, that infamous now Intercontinental video that was released with him and Cassie from 2016. And I think that it'll be interesting to see what his life is like as a businessman moving forward, but I don't expect to see something in the immediacy. And I definitely expect us to be dissecting his legacy for a good while now.
And we do have a statement from Cassie Ventura's attorney, Douglas Wigdor. And he says, and I'm quoting here, "This entire criminal process started when our client, Cassie Ventura, had the courage to file her civil complaint in November of 2023. Although the jury did not find Combs guilty of sex trafficking Cassie beyond a reasonable doubt, she paved the way for a jury to find him guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. By coming forward with her experience, Cassie has left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice. We must repeat with no reservation that we believe and support our client, who showed exemplary courage throughout this trial." The statement goes on to talk about her strength on the stand and to talk about the misconduct they say has persisted for decades without repercussion. Bernardo, I want to go to you on this point of what this means for future cases, precedent here. Does a verdict like this deter future potential witnesses in similar cases?
I think it definitely does. A verdict like this does deter victims and witnesses from coming forward. I think when you're talking about when the perpetrator is one of who has power, who has money, who had the key to the city, I think victims are looking at it, wait, if the prosecution gave it all they had and they went after him and they still didn't find him guilty, what about little old me? What about just regular perpetrator from down the block? What's going to happen in that type of case? So I think this is a huge deterrence for victims.
And Brian, I'm out of time, but I quickly want to touch on the way this case was brought has been criticized from the beginning. The actual charges they brought, the fact that it was a federal trial and so on. Walk me through that part of it. And do you think there are any legal lessons learned there?
I think there are legal lessons in terms of how to bring this case. I think for federal prosecutors, they've used the RICO statute in very creative ways. If you want to talk about R. Kelly, if you want to talk about Donald Trump, there have been people who have been in the spotlight who have bemoaned and said that this is not how the statute is meant to be. And I think this might be one of the first major setbacks in this use of the statute in this kind of new wave. And I think this is going to be, agreeing with what Bernardo said, but I'll add on to a reevaluation of how do we define RICO going forward? Who fits into a RICO? What is a criminal enterprise? And are we going to open or close off how we now progress or move forward in terms of evaluating, should we use this statute for these different types of enterprises?
All right. Rena, Brian, Bernardo, Kelly, thank you all. And big thanks to Aaron Katursky, who again has been at that courthouse from the very beginning. Also, for more on today's verdict, catch the ABC News live show Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy, streaming tonight at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, the rough weather is complicating Republicans' race to pass President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah, this is insane, man. Insane. And for everybody who played Brian Cross later on, I'm not wishing bad on no black man. This black man did a lot of fucked up shit. He's an evil motherfucker, man. And I think a lot of people know that. So it ain't about, wishing bad on another black man. That ain't what this is about. Yeah, that is a shame, Uncle Charles. And then, I think the fact that, the jury was mostly men helped Diddy. I don't know how many white men, I don't know how many black men, but I know it was mostly men. And I look at it like this. If those men was out there goddamn, tricking, prostituting at a point in their life, they probably ain't seen nothing wrong with it. They probably flew some people out as well, Yeah, this shit right here is insane, man. This shit is insane. I forgot to put a thumbnail up on this thing, man. That'll work for right now. So I know I've seen one person put he may get time served. These two charges, transportation for prostitution. We know he been in jail for what? Since October of last year? August, somewhere up in there. He haven't even done a whole year. So if the judge decide to give him some months, then yeah, he's straight. If the judge decide to give him 1 year, all he got to do is serve about 3 more months. Well, if there's more victims out there, which I'm pretty damn sure there are, y'all might as well try to come get y'all some money. I hate to sound like that. I hate to even say that. I just replay that video in my head of what he was doing to that girl. That's something, you know, real men don't tolerate, man. Real men don't tolerate that. If I had a partner and I witnessed that, he gonna have to fight me. He gonna have to fight me. Oh, you tough enough to hit a woman? Hit me, nigga. Hit me. You ain't gonna hit me? I'm gonna hit you then. They couldn't even, which I knew they wasn't gonna be able to prove the racketeering with Kid Cudi's car. They ain't have enough evidence on that. If they could have had the evidence on that, I think they could have sealed the deal on racketeering and he'd have been fucked for real then. But I didn't think they was gonna be able to get 2 out of the 3. I knew they could have got 1, but yeah, money is a motherfucker, man. For the love of money. For the love of money. What are they talking about? That's crazy. I'm gonna share this with y'all. That man said, "All right, Kelly Luck ran out when he ran out of money."
Lawyer versus another, that really is what the battle comes down to, a lawyer's team.
All right, Jem, appreciate your time here. I want to bring back in Misty because, you know, one of the things that is different than a case like R. Kelly is the difference between adults and minors. The law looks at them differently. And in a case like this, where you had 2 grown women on the stand who obviously had been through a horrific ordeal, if their testimony was to be believed, and some of it was on tape. And obviously it was powerful. Obviously the jury must have taken that in some way. But do you wonder if we had not been talking about 2 grown women, the outcome would be different?
Absolutely, because when it comes to minors, there's no element of consent. You only have the force, fraud, or coercion aspect of this. So it would just be whether or not you had that interstate commerce element. When it comes to minors, it's a much different case for prosecutors. And before this case went to trial, many of us with some of these civil lawsuits opined that minors might have been a factor, yet prosecutors never brought that into the case. So presumably there was no evidence that that was something that Diddy could be charged with. So that it really changes the game when it comes to these other similar cases, specifically R. Kelly, the involvement of minors. But something I do want to point out here, because Cassie Ventura's testimony and Jane's testimony, obviously that was critical to the sex trafficking counts, but it also relates to the transportation to engage in prostitution, because we're not just talking about bringing these male escorts across state lines. We're also talking about Cassie crossing state lines and Jane crossing state lines.
Flying her to Miami.
Exactly.
That's all it really takes.
As I'm thinking about what the prosecutors are going to argue, not only today in their application to keep Combs behind bars, but also when we get to sentencing. This is a federal case, so the federal prosecutors can actually bring in a lot of testimony and make arguments at trial relating to what came out, even when you have some of these acquittals, specifically relating to these prostitution charges, because they relate to Jane, they relate to Cassie. So if I'm the prosecutors, I'm sitting there and I'm crafting an argument that's, all right, there's conceded violence, there is danger. And I think that's what we're going to see in this submission at 1 o'clock, and then forecasting when we get to a sentencing, which is down the road. The defense, on the other hand, is going to say, well, these were isolated relationships. He's no longer in them, right? These were romantic relationships. Clearly, that's the way the jury saw it because of the acquittals on sex trafficking. But I don't want to discount the testimony of Jane and Cassie. Obviously, the jury is the arbiter of credibility. We don't know what they thought about that or their reasoning with these not guilty verdicts. But that testimony will still be part of argument that we're going to hear as this trial, as the sentencing proceeds, and this next very important application about whether or not Diddy is free today.
You have practiced law a long time. In your estimation, if you were to guess, do you think that the judge will release him today?
I do. I really do. And I think that the defense has everything they need to put in this 1 p.m. letter. already teed up, written, just needs to print it out. And I say that because they have challenged his incarceration right from the very beginning. They've said that he should be out on bail, he should be out on bond, he should face home detention. A lot of those arguments, although now it's different, he's obviously been convicted of only these sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution charges. He's been acquitted on the rest. Not to say they aren't serious, they're still federal crimes, but it's just a different element with that force, fraud, and coercion as far as danger to society now that there's an acquittal. But a lot of those arguments remain the same, Laura, and they were comparing cases that were quite similar when it came to sex trafficking and RICO pre-trial, where there had been released defendants in the Southern District, New York. So I think you're going to see a lot of what was already put on paper before the court in pre-trial proceedings, and it's just going to be a stronger argument now, given the results of this trial.
If the judge decides to release him today, Misty, he can appeal that, right? He appealed his detention on any variety of occasions pre-trial. Remember, he kept trying to get out, and then eventually he just dropped it.
Yes.
But if the judge decides today to keep him behind bars for whatever reason he's persuaded by the prosecutors, can he take that up to the Second Circuit?
Yeah, you're going to see emergency applications on appeal. For release. You're going to see briefs going by order to show cause, which is a faster way of getting clarity from the court. You're absolutely going to see that, because unless prosecutors come up with some case, some legal precedent that is on point with this set of facts. And again, I want to reiterate, no matter what we think of Diddy, what we think of Combs from the perspective of the outside, right? We've heard a lot about things he's done in civil lawsuits. We've heard a lot about him and what he's done to individuals through the testimony and through other, just in the public sphere. He's a first-time offender from a legal perspective. This is his first conviction. And so that's something that's going to be a factor when the judge makes this determination. And I stand by, that danger to society, that's an element the court looks at. These are the critical elements when releasing an individual. That's an argument that is watered down at this point, unless there's something we don't know, given the results of this trial, what the jury has found. But when it comes to a flight risk, that's where I think prosecutors may have more leeway given the resources that he has. Now, there may be a home detention element. There may be something else that the defense will offer.
The defense is conceding that. Defense is basically saying, we'll give you whatever you want.
Whatever
Judge,
you want.
But
Take
get
him
him out of the MDC, right?
Right.
The judge is saying to him, do you want to get out of the MDC today? And he's saying, obviously, yes. And people know that is an infamous, terrible place to be. Nobody wants to be there if they can avoid it. And so his position is he does not want to go to the MDC tonight if he can avoid it, and he can get out today. And I would imagine would be willing to put up as much as he can to fight that.
Absolutely. And again, the defense has a strong argument given this outcome. I know prosecutors are going to put together something relating to that threat to society. We're probably going to hear about violence. It's been conceded. We know that he said, the defense had conceded that there was violence in relationships and drugs. We also know, and this is what I would expect to see, and this was not part of the case, Laura, and I always found this interesting, that when his homes were raided, when there were searches done of Combs' homes, there were guns that were taken by law enforcement. They did not make it into this trial.
And guns were not part of the racketeering.
Not a part of it. No, we all thought it was going to be.
And they had scratched off serial numbers,
which is a serious crime to have those scratched off serial numbers. I expect the prosecution to hearken back to that. Now, the defense may have some counter arguments, because I got to tell you, there's a reason why they weren't in this trial, right? There's a reason why that was precluded. If prosecutors could have gotten that in, I suspect they would have. So the defense likely has an argument, but I would expect to see some of that come into what prosecutors argue today in that 1 p.m. submission.
Well, we are certainly going to see it at 1 p.m. Misty, thank you for your time and expertise. Just to recap here for people joining us, Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul, has in fact been convicted on 2 of the 5 criminal counts he was facing in this trial. A federal jury finding him guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, but not guilty, acquitted on the more serious charges related to sex trafficking and racketeering. The court has adjourned for the morning as the judge considers whether Combs can be released from custody. We're going to have much more ahead, but for now, that concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have more ahead on NBC News.
The NBC News mobile app. Get connected to your favorite news
So I guess the fact that they felt like they couldn't prove, sex trafficking by force. I mean, I don't know how you could prove that. Because none of them said he made me. But we do know there was some coercion involved. Like with the Jane, which I think everybody know that was 50 Cent baby mama. I'm not gonna pay your rent, $10,000 rent. You gotta work. You gotta come up here and do your job, shouty. Yeah. And that's what they do, man. They'll hold money over your head, not in the sense of they're gonna kill you, but if you used to living a certain life, you want to continue to live a certain life. He know you're gonna do it. That's why Cassie dealt with this shit so long. She came out, did her little album, her little music, which she wasn't really no major star. Diddy could have made her one, but he mixed business and pleasure. Started fucking with the girl. Shit. Eventually she stopped doing music and just started being Diddy's sex toy, sex slave for however many years. She actually mentioned, I did this shit because I ain't want nobody else to do it for him. She was in love with it. She was young 19-year-old girl, man. She was living a lifestyle, she wasn't used to living. And I'm pretty sure when, she started doing music up on the Bad Boy, as soon as she got sexually involved with Diddy, he probably started doing that weird, freaky shit. She probably wanted out. But then Diddy say, bitch, I'll take everything from you. You won't work with no other label around this motherfucker. And that's the type of shit Diddy do. It's coercion, man. I feel like they could have got him for that. They could have got him for that, man. But the law says it's all about what you can prove. Well, let me stop sharing my screen. That's why it's got me doing that. It's all about what you can prove. On a reasonable doubt, right? And I guess, those like, if I can't prove it, I can't put it on them. Shit, if it was me, which I know you did, you was a nasty ass nigga, man. You was a nasty nigga, man. Come on, man. In my Bootsy Boo voice. Come on, man. Oh.
Thank you, thanks for the 5 gifted memberships. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Willow. Great. 5 new members courtesy of Willow. Great.
JR investigate. Now he good people though.
Architecture and interior design? Find a 3D designer today.
Fiverr. Start now. Save time creating content and generate a high-quality clone of your voice with 11 Labs.
Your dress and where your kids work, that kind of thing.
It's not that glamorous. We are literally running behind them as they are leaving because we don't, unless you're in the courtroom every day, you don't know who they are, so you have to make mental notes, blue tie, blue jacket, and you have to chase these people. And that's what we do when they happen.
But I want to know is different than I need to know.
Sure.
And I think that people's personal safety is too important.
Oh, absolutely.
In the world that we live in, I would not suggest that, but it's up to them, obviously.
Of course, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of days you hear certain leaks from certain jurors learning about the deliberations. That happens in most of these high-profile cases these days, is you learn after the fact. I wouldn't be surprised also if the judge's deputies got the jurors out of a back entrance so that they escorted them out through an entrance so that the press wasn't bothering them today. This judge was very careful to make sure that the press was not finding out the identity of these jurors. And I wouldn't be surprised if they escorted them out a back entrance and that those jurors are already on their way home.
So this is what I'm going to say. Anybody who's watching, who's friends or family with any of the jurors, we will put them on in silhouette, change their voices.
You can advocate for that. I am not supportive of that.
We would put their story out there without putting their identity. Yeah. It's happened in the past. We've done it for tens of years.
Go ahead. I'm staying out of this one.
I know, but I just think that, don't you want to know how?
Because you want to know something doesn't mean you need to know. The jury, what they told you is what you need to know. That's just my opinion. I just don't believe in that.
Now, sometimes they do talk, there have been instances, they will talk to us, even with the presence of an escort who then just steps off like, well, it's in your hands now. So we do get that, sometimes.
Where's Diddy?
So Diddy right now is in a holding cell at the courthouse waiting to be brought back into court at whatever time the court reconvenes.
All right. Arthur Idell is standing by as well. Arthur, I'm sorry.
I just want to tell you, regarding what the topic you're talking about, jurors, I never learned more about my craft than when I speak to jurors after a trial, whether that was when I was a prosecutor and things that they focused on, and when I was a prosecutor about, I believed your witness when he identified the defendant sitting at the chair, because he didn't just say the guy sitting at the chair. He said the guy sitting at the chair with the pink shirt and the button-down collars and a little bit of a stain on his shoulder. And he's like, once we heard that he was so detail-oriented, that's when we knew he was telling the truth. Like, I would have never thought of that in a million years. And as a defense attorney, it's the same thing. You get to ask them, like, what worked? What didn't work? What resonated with you? What didn't resonate with you? Whether I got the verdict on the case that I wanted or I didn't want, it's almost like you guys, Kurt and Rosanna, like, speaking to your audience, like, what'd you like about that segment? What didn't you like about that segment? Was this good? Was that, should we change this? So I love, as a lawyer, to speak to the jurors. I understand what both of you are saying regarding whether they should speak or not, but it is fascinating to hear what happens when you put 12 strangers in a room together for 2 months and you say, don't talk about what we're working on. Don't talk about this project for 2 months until a couple of days ago when they allowed you to talk about it. And then 12 strangers have to agree on judging another human being's life and lifestyle, et cetera. I mean, it is a very, from a human perspective, it is fascinating. And I will tell you this, Kurt, your viewers, I agree. I hear what you're saying in terms of protecting the jurors themselves as individuals. I got you. But from viewers' perspectives, from a human perspective, it is fascinating to hear what happened when they went into the jury room and how things played out.
I understand I'm in the minority on this set, in this newsroom. I totally get it. I totally get it. I'm just not in favor of it. But hey, one man's opinion.
Okay.
That's it.
Apparently, Arthur Chan is tweeting that a Sprinter van pulled to the closed garage on the Pearl Street side, and that's where the jurors, it's speculated the jurors left from that entrance, and I guess they dismissed them. They probably got them to another place that's safe from the prying eyes of the press.
You also pointed out, Rosanna, that the New York Times was saying that Psalm 11 is what Sean Combs read. I looked it up. It's a declaration of trust in God's adversity and a reminder of his justice against enemies, so of his children. So.
Well, it basically says, I put my trust in you, which is if anybody is going through hardship, you know that you need help from a divine individual to help you get through that. And you have to trust that God's going to take care of you. And that's what Diddy was reading as the verdict came in.
I think
today.
some people will have a hard time looking at that video and thinking that God sided with Diddy.
Kurt, I was going to ask you this, because
I'm just saying, that's the honest truth.
But no, that and just the other allegations that came out. I mean, this man's reputation, has taken a serious hit in the court of public opinion. Sadly, they're not in his head. The term freak offs is now something that all of us cannot.
And listen, I'm never going to look at baby oil again. All right.
You're not in agreement about the reputation.
I agree that the reputational harm, he can never get his reputation back. And I agree with everything that Arthur said, right? Speaking to the jurors is an invaluable part of our craft. And you learn things that happened in the jury deliberation room that the lawyers weren't even focused on. I've spoken to jurors and I hear that they were focused on these issues. And I'm like, I didn't even think that was an issue in this case. And the jurors focus on things that it's a great study of human psychology, as Arthur was talking about. You learn so much.
Yo, it is bullshit. Tell me how he gonna get his reputation back. Man, fuck his reputation.
Obviously, the parties are very busy right now.
With all them damn people who did all this evil shit too, man. Y'all tripping.
So they probably are
Shut the fuck up,
anyway, and they may try to reach out to the jurors at a later point. But it's always harder to speak to them at a later date. It's easiest when it's fresh, when they're leaving the courthouse, when you could speak to them. That's when they most want to be spoken to. When they move on with their lives, it's less likely that they want to be spoken to about a case like this. But like I said, I would expect in the next couple of days, we'll hear some leaks, we'll hear some reports of some of the jurors, and some of the jurors may go on TV, like Rosanna asked. They may be public. They may want to discuss what the deliberation room looked like.
And we can hide their identity and voice. We've done that before in the past.
Girl,
but I think people are curious about how the deliberations went. Was there fighting over the RICO?
She want to know,
goddamn. Yesterday, we thought we had a hung jury on the RICO count.
Yeah, and it was a fairly quick verdict for a 2-month trial, right? We had basically a day plus of deliberations, right? Yesterday was the only full day. This morning they deliberated for maybe an hour, and on Monday they deliberated for a very short amount of time. So it was a fairly quick deliberation for a 2-month trial, and so it would be curious to hear what was happening in that jury room. As Rosanna pointed out, yesterday they did indicate that there were jurors dug in on both sides of the aisle on the RICO racketeering count. So clearly they were persuaded by the judge's instructions, and clearly they were persuaded by their fellow jurors to go back and deliberate honestly and fairly, and they were convinced that he was not guilty of that count.
Well, even Adala's case with Weinstein too. Remember the jury? They were basically fighting. We were like, we can't deal with this. That would have been really interesting just to get the temperature, take a barometer of what that was.
Arthur, are you there? Did you ever talk to?
I'm here, and what Seth was saying. What we also have to factor in there is they went home last night, and when people go home, right? You don't know what happens. I mean, first of all, I know they're not supposed to read or hear anything about the case, but a case of this magnitude, it's almost impossible. You get into the cab, all of a sudden, you hear this screen in the cab. You go on Facebook and there's something about it.
What happened to your volume, Nick?
You go out overnight, you can see jurors change their minds. And in fact, in the Weinstein case, when they said they were hung, and one juror said, "Look, I'm done. I'm not going back in there." The judge broke for the day at 3 p.m, said, "Everyone go home. Let's cool off, and we'll come back tomorrow and see what happens." And when he came back tomorrow, the juror was like, "I'm done. I have my verdict. They're trying to change my mind. I'm not going to allow them to change my mind. I heard the evidence," and that was it. The judge had to declare a mistrial. But again, Weinstein's case, Puffy's case, we considered a win that we got Weinstein. There were 3 women. We found guilty only of one. The other 2, there was no decision on. Well, one he was not guilty. One there's no decision. The same with Puffy, right? He beat most of the.
Let's think about this real quick, man. This is a 2-month trial. OJ shit was 9 months. Do y'all know they only pay these fucking jurors only $50 a day, man? What if you got a goddamn job that's paying you $100,000, $200,000 a year, and you getting paid $50 a day for 2 straight months? Man, come on with the fucking game. Come on, man. Come on, man.
Half maybe, or maybe a little less to get into the halfway house. You know, all of these get out of jail free cards do not apply to sex crimes cases. So the first step back, all things that allow people to go to a camp, to be in a more luxurious camp fed, they don't apply when you're for sex crimes cases. So he beat the top counts. Fantastic job by the defense. If the judge is the one who gets to write the last chapter here. The judge says, I'm sentencing you to time served and 5 years probation. It's an enormous victory for the defense, an enormous blow for the prosecution. If the judge says, I'm sentencing you to 15 years, 10 on one and 5 on the other to run consecutively, because I heard all of the evidence. And the judge is allowed to take into consideration the evidence that he heard that he was, even though he was acquitted on. The judge is allowed to look at the totality of the circumstances surrounding this individual and his potential to be a danger to society, to recommit these kinds of crimes. So he can take all of that into account. So we shall see. If the judge lets him out today, it's a good indication he's not going to bang him out. If the judge doesn't let him out today, it remains to be seen.
All right, well, we should have some answers to that in a couple of hours. They have to file their paperwork by 1 o'clock, and then the judge will make a decision. Arthur, stay on hold for just a second. I want to check in with Lisa Evers outside the courtroom.
10 do 5, nigga. Nah, we ain't talking about that.
Hey, Curtin Rowe, we're here. Curtin Rowe, we're here at outside federal court where we've been all morning. I'm joined right now by extra senior correspondent Mona Kosar Abdi, and she's been following this case every single day, and we're going to get some reaction about the entertainment community. Mona, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Is there a certain prevailing trend among the entertainment community that you're hearing in response to this verdict?
I think it's too early right now to hear the responses, but what we do know is immediately once it was clear that Diddy was under investigation, I think actually before then, when we saw Cassie Ventura's lawsuit and read some of the
I wouldn't hang with you, Diddy. You a nasty man. You like licking man cum, man. What the fuck is wrong with you, bro? A lot of people started distancing themselves. Nah, man, we ain't fucking with you, Diddy. This was somebody who you know through some of the most lavish A-list Hollywood parties where anyone from Donald Trump to Leonardo DiCaprio. Don't come in here with your business, YJ. What up, bro? Yeah, man. What'd you say, Tanya? You say exactly. This is all done to show him he don't run shit. Yeah, a lot of people say that too. So now I feel they might as well let Kelly out. He did way more than Kelly. Hey, man, just like they said earlier, I don't know if you was in here, they say Kelly locked up because he ran out of money. Diddy ain't run out of money.
To 112 to Mary J. Blige. He also made hits with like Mariah Carey. So he was someone who was a hit maker, who was associated to a lot of celebrities and was buddies with Jay-Z. He was at the Rock Nation brunches with Jay-Z regularly. And so to see immediately that nobody was willing to come to his defense. But I think there were rumors for a long time that he was an eccentric figure and that people did not want to excuse his behavior, but he was somebody to know at the time.
And did you get a sense that some of the people in the entertainment,
did you hear the stories that they told about Diddy? Come to his defense.
Maybe we're looking at their own behavior, taking a second look after these charges, going, wait a minute, if they can go after somebody
over there sitting in the corner beating his meat while somebody beat on his own lady. Man, use them.
Yeah, so
that's super nasty,
it was the defense's angle definitely to say that the prosecution was
over there in the corner like, take that, take that, take that.
They also mentioned that there was another rapper who, the woman who was going by the pseudonym Jane, was familiar with. They said he's another big rapper who was into that lifestyle. And that's how the defense was categorizing that this is a lifestyle. He was into the swingers lifestyle and he had non-conventional sex. That shouldn't mean that the government should go into his bedroom and put crime scene tape. And they kept saying that he was overstepping. And so I do think that if he was convicted of the sex trafficking charge, that it might put a lot of people on alert about, well, what if I was flying in someone or having threesomes? But I think there was a lot more to it, and a lot more that the prosecution was using to support their case. But like you said, it did definitely ring bells in Hollywood.
And then a lot of people too, once that video was released and the world saw that Cassie beating video, even though those weren't specific charges to this case, it was a very important building block for the prosecution. But was there a sense people were just like, okay, that does it. All the stuff I've been hearing is true.
Yeah, which is why I think that even though now he has been acquitted of 3 of the serious charges, and he's still convicted, he's still looking at some serious prison time, I don't think that Hollywood is going to be welcoming him with open arms, because that video was so disturbing and so brutal, and the defense didn't really have a defense for him. They said, listen, we know he's not a good person sometimes, that he was violent towards Cassie, that he was abusive. Their argument was that that doesn't mean that he's guilty of RICO and sex trafficking, but he still has to answer to that. And we all saw that video, and his apology video that he made after the video was released fell flat. And so that's why I think that regardless of the outcome or when he is released, I don't think Hollywood is waiting with open arms for him.
And then what about you're a journalist, but there were so many stories, so much on, I call it the social media tsunami beforehand, of all these rumors with minors and all of these other things that were going on. Does that concern you about how that might influence people, in a big case like this, where these things they're right in your face? You pick up your phone and it's the first thing that pops up on your screen, whether you're following that person or subscribing or not.
Yeah, Lisa, you make a good point, because there's the court of law and then there's the court of public opinion. And in the court of public opinion, to a lot of people, he is still guilty. And there were a lot of allegations made in the civil lawsuits that he still also has to answer to, some involving minors, some involving just different things and abuse allegations, for example. And he still has to answer to that. But right now, the big hurdle that he was trying to overcome was not spending the rest of his life in prison. And so today, the judge is weighing if he will be able to walk out of these doors out on bail, but he's still looking about to up to 20
Diddy might
years
as well.
So he still has a long road ahead.
10 years on each,
Look
10
here.
years maximum on each count of the transportation.
Diddy might as well carry his ass over there with Russell Simmons.
I tried to include in my
Nobody don't want to see your monkey ass no more, Diddy. We don't want you walking around licking your lips. Nobody.
And the
We don't know what you got on your lips.
Support. They were obviously very, well coached in terms
Yeah,
of like.
he's not needed here. He's not wanted. Nobody don't like that.
Pay any attention to it.
Except
Just
them
keep
freaky
walking
motherfuckers.
straight, keep your dignity, which they did. But just
I bet you the Punisher excited.
just
Yes,
his mother, even
they
some
freed
days
him
when no one else was there.
and get some more work done. You think this nigga gonna go back to work and doing this shit again? Yeah, throw Diddy ass up under the jail.
Of a family around him, even despite these sensational allegations, had on the jury.
I think it had a huge impact. At one point during his closing argument, Mark Igniflo,
The judge should be coming back. What time it is?
pointed to the family.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they said around 1, 12 or 1 o'clock.
Who helps people, that he helped people of color that worked in his businesses, was giving them opportunities. He said before
So,
DEI
yeah.
was even a thing, and he said that is why.
But
his
he's
family
coming back,
and pointed right at them
and
while
I
they were
think
sitting in
that's
the
when he's gonna
gallery.
let us know if he's gonna let Diddy go home today.
He takes care of people, and I think that really resonated.
I don't know. I
The
don't
other thing,
think
too,
they're gonna
is the mother of his twin
give him
and
his
Christian
sentence
Holmes
today.
was brought
That
up
sentence
in
probably
his
gonna be on
story
another
since,
day.
his late girlfriend.
But I think the day when he comes back, he'll be letting us know if Diddy's going home.
If the defense kept bringing her up, that the jury in the back of their
I
mind.
wonder who the first female gonna give Diddy some pussy.
They're 18 years old. They already lost their mother, and now they may potentially lose their father if he spends the rest of his life in prison. So I think that was a factor.
And that it played into that as well. And then what about in terms of women, like women looking at their own behavior and
Shit!
like you
I
pay
crack
for this,
myself
you
up
pay for
sometimes.
that, and we're dating, but you're paying me. What about that? And that's not just limited to hip hop or to entertainment. That cuts across a lot of different cultures and a lot of different economic and demographic.
Same young man.
There was a lot of social conversations that were going on, and this is why this case was so
Hey,
polarizing, right? So
I don't see how a woman can kiss this cat, man.
when it came to Jane, and they even said verbatim,
You do what with that
Jane is a very
motherfucker?
different person than Cassie is.
Why Jay say Cassie?
Jane likes to do it for the
Man,
gram.
Cassie better not be seen with no Diddy.
Get out of this relationship. He connected her to numerous
Hey, it might be J-Lo.
and he kept bringing up the fact that she was jealous of women.
Y'all know J-Lo stayed out of this shit the whole time. Her name never came up.
she always was would
J-Lo a vampire, dog. That lady don't fucking age.
him taking another woman on a trip, for example. And so they highlighted that to show that she was a willing participant in all of this, and it was just a transactional relationship, for example.
Exactly. Well, Mona, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Mona Kosar Abdi. Got it
Oh
right?
shit, I
Okay.
forgot that the shit turned down. I'm over here tripping,
Thank you so
people.
much for sharing your insight and your experience with us on this. We really appreciate it. Back to you in the studio.
All right. Thank you very much, Lisa, for that insight. And as we get ready to readjust, keep in mind that we will keep you covered right here. As to the latest happenings, the judges asked for both parties to give him paperwork by 1 o'clock, which is just over an hour from now. And then he will make a decision as to whether or not Diddy will be released on bail
1
or
o'clock.
be held on still in prison or in the detention center.
The Brooklyn Detention Center.
Right.
Yeah.
Until this case is decided as far as sentencing goes. We'll have more on that. The noon comes your way in just a few minutes right now.
Right.
Kurt Menefee, Rosanna Scotto, Seth Zuckerman still with us here. Seth, anything you want to wrap up here with as we get to the top of the hour?
I just think this is a huge win for Diddy, right? He was convicted of only the 2 prostitution counts and was found not guilty of both the RICO racketeering and the sex trafficking counts. That's a huge win. There's no mandatory minimum prison sentence at this point.
So the judge could give him a few months.
The judge could give him a few months.
Or no time at all, right?
Correct. There'll
Time
be
served.
I would find that hard to believe, but it's absolutely possible. The sentencing guidelines will call for a few years.
Y'all found it hard to
and
believe
there's
that he was gonna be
maximum of
walking
10
free.
on each count, which can be done consecutively, which is why he
Y'all
faces up
found
to
it hard
20
to
years.
believe that he was
But this is a huge win.
I think the
They thought he
women's
was gonna
groups
get that
are gonna be
goddamn RICO
so
charge.
angry right
They
now.
just knew they had him for that shit.
Over
Well,
what Cassie Ventura endured. We saw the videotape in the hallway. That was just a sampling of what went on behind closed doors. And
We heard more and more stories.
Hey, I'm gonna tell y'all what's gonna happen, man. Cause y'all can't forget, man. Y'all cannot forget that Cassie's husband had to sit here and listen to this shit, man. He had to sit there and listen to all this nasty shit his wife did. He gonna come out them bushes like old boy did in A Time to Kill. Like did it. So let me quit playing, man. Let me stop.
May have overplayed their hand here, Kurt. They showed that video again and again and again.
At the beginning and the end.
And to the point that the jurors actually could become numb to it. The first time you saw that video, we were all shocked and appalled, right? But when you see that video 5, 6, 10, 20 times, you kind of become numb to it a little bit. And I think the prosecution may have made a misstep by showing it so many times in this case that I don't think the video played as large of a role as everyone thought that it would play, that it played. Now, there's also a school of thought that the video should not have been allowed into evidence to begin with. It was a very prejudicial video, and it didn't go directly to the counts that he was charged with. Obviously, the judge made an evidentiary determination to allow it in based on the racketeering charge, and the jury saw it. But I think the government made a misstep by showing it so many times that I think the jury may have become numb to it by
All
the end.
right, Seth, thank you so much for, summarizing and giving us an idea of what might be going on behind closed doors right now as we speak. We're going to continue our coverage. Bianca Peters is here. We're on the Fox Local app. If you don't have it, get it now. It's free. And we will be continuing coverage.
And Bianca's going to have more on the noon. Of course, 5, 6, 10 o'clock tonight. We will cover this from beginning to end.
Yeah.
There's no end yet.
Should we get a check on the weather from Audrey?
Let's check in with Audrey real quick.
Good morning to both of you. We'll give a little wrap up of what's going on weather-wise across the tri-state area while we transition into our next hour of coverage here. So we have
Damn your weather.
of the racketeering activity, bribery, arson, but they focused in on a lot of examples of the drug charge. So after you hear them say that, you think, well, I guess the jury, maybe that's what they're going to do, find him guilty. But again, you never know. And the judge instructed them during jury instructions, whatever the attorneys have said, that's not evidence. You're the finders of the facts. You have to look at all of the evidence presented in this case. And that evidence, of course, was what witnesses said on the stand, not the questions the attorneys asked them. Whatever the witnesses said, we saw photos of the searches. The jury saw, we did not see, the sexually explicit so-called freak-off videos. Those were the drug-fueled sexual encounters with male escorts that either Cassandra Ventura or Jane.
All right, man. So let's chat, man. Let's chat a little bit. We'll come back to this, man. Let's chat a little bit. So I think we all probably on the same page. Did anybody want this motherfucker to go free? Or was that just me? I know I did. See what you talking about, D-Love. I appreciate y'all for sliding through too, man. You know, y'all could have been anywhere in the world. But you right here. I appreciate y'all for sliding through too. Right here with me, excuse me. Anyone seeing that tape without some type of understanding would be like, why didn't she just leave with the security guard? For the love of money. And that's what hurt. That's what hurt the sex trafficking. Like, you couldn't say she was forced because she had every opportunity to leave. But again, coercion is a motherfucker. You think she was finna give up that lifestyle and let some other female live that lifestyle? She wanted to do it. I don't know. Cassie got her 20 mil though. She damn sure got her 20 mil though. Let me see what YJ said. Didn't want to go free, but I always had a feeling he could. Yeah. Hey, that's two people in the last, year and a half that done beat RICO charges. Young Thug and Diddy. That RICO shit starting to lose its power, huh? Well, it's the fact that these motherfuckers got money. We done figured out how to beat a RICO charge. Have a bag, nigga. Have a bag and you'll beat the RICO charge. Other than that, you fuck. Oh, Diddy. So yeah, the judge told both sides had their paperwork in by 1 p.m. So I guess until 1 p.m., that's when we'll find out is Diddy gonna walk free until his sentencing. How much time you think Diddy gonna get, if any? You think he gonna get time served? You think he gonna do a few months? 5 years? 10 years? The max is 20. Because he got two counts, and each one around a max of 10 years apiece. What y'all thinking? I think that motherfucker, that motherfucker might get time served and probation. I hope not, but I ain't expect for this nigga to beat this motherfucker. D-Love say time served and probation. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, 80s, baby. Oh, man. Well, I'm glad you're doing better. Man, we ain't know that. I ain't know that, man. Damn. I'm glad you still here. My sister-in-law had a stroke last year. Damn. Take care of yourself, love. Take care of yourself. Sucks. That sucks. Yeah, I mean, just like one of the news stations we was watching is like the judge actually had the opportunity to sit here and hear how many times he done this shit and all the shit that he's been doing. If you take all that shit in consideration, like, damn, well, you got away with the biggest charges, the charges that carry the longest sentence. You beat all that shit, but you ain't beat these two. This is why I step in. Give him the max on both counts. You thought you was gonna get away then. You in my courtroom talking about daddy's coming home. No, daddy, you finna go sit your ass down and go up that road. Give him 20. Max his ass hot. Let me stop, man. Let me stop. Oh man. Oh man. Oh Diddy. Oh Diddy. Mr. Take that. Diddy gonna be goddamn dancing in them Harlem streets when he get home, nigga. If he get home. I don't know. We'll find out at 1 o'clock though. But we won't find out till the sentencing. I don't know. The sentencing normally be when? Maybe a week or two, a month. Tomorrow. We want to know, goddammit. But yeah. I'm gonna probably pop back up about 1. So if y'all still around, come back and fuck with me. I'm gonna go cook me something to eat, man. I'm hungry than a motherfucker. I just got up. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for sliding in, man. Fucking with your boy. Meantime, tween time. Diddy said y'all thought y'all had me, didn't you? Oh man, I'm gonna fuck with y'all later on, man. Y'all be easy, boss.